I started a new Etsy shop selling digital resources for piano teachers, and here's my experience so far. Hi, I'm Phoenix, and I'm the Tattooed Piano Teacher. You may have found my channel through my piano teacher content, or perhaps you found me through my TPT seller content. Either way, you might be interested in today's video. In this video, I'm going to talk about my experience selling on Etsy for the first 2 months and the stats associated with that. And I'm going to compare Etsy experience to TPT experience because I'm selling the same things on both platforms. And stick around to the end, I'll give you my opinion on whether or not I think it's worth it to sell this sort of thing on Etsy. So I just started my Etsy shop a couple of months ago. It was January 1st, 2024. Over those first 2 months, I've gotten 37 listings up. The types of products that I'm listing are the same things that I list on my Teachers Pay Teachers store, which is like around $3 to $4 resources, things that teachers can print out and use with their students. Musical activities or games, music theory resources, basically. I have made 14 sales so far with a conversion rate of 5.4%. I have 3 reviews so far, and they are all 5 stars. That's great. So how much money have I made on Etsy so far just in the first 2 months? The grand total is $38.64. So I would say that overall the experience has been positive. Like any new platform, there is definitely a learning curve. There are some things that differ from uploading products to other platforms, and some things that I had to figure out, mistakes I made, listings that looked kind of wonky until I fixed them, things like that. But all in all, I feel like I've kind of got it figured out. So far, I have had like one technical difficulty with a customer. A customer messaged me through the Etsy app. They purchased a digital download. They hit print. It didn't print because of printer error on their end, but then they weren't able to reprint it without rebuying it. But that all worked out. I got that person their product and they were happy with my customer service. So it all worked out just fine. But let's talk about like how it compares specifically to selling on Teachers Pay Teachers. Before I list those specifics, hit the like button if you'd be interested to see future updates on my experience with Etsy or future income reports or anything like that. So here are some of the major differences that I noticed uploading resources to Etsy versus TPT. When I started my store on TPT, I felt like I got more exposure, more views right away, whereas with Etsy, it was less views. And I think it's just because it's a bigger platform with all sorts of stuff, not just teacher resources. However, I do think that the platform to view like stats on Etsy is really, really nice. Like it's just streamlined and it all looks nice. It's easy to find what you're looking for. It's easy to quickly see how many views or how many sales you have on any product. With the TPT dashboard, it's a little more like not quite as intuitive, like you can find all the information, but I like that it's just kind of all in one place on Etsy. So as far as the upload experience goes, I was just planning on taking all of the stuff that I put up on TPT and then just like basically copying and pasting it over to Etsy, but it wasn't quite that simple because there are some differences. On Etsy, the main difference is that the file of the actual product cannot be very big. And so I found myself taking things that I had uploaded to TPT and having to split them up into smaller files. However, you can upload multiple files to Etsy, but I would just have to like split the file up into 2 PDFs and then upload 2 of them. And then I just have to say in the description, this will download as 2 PDFs. I tried compressing the PDF, but that didn't work because then it was a little bit fuzzy, like the quality of the text was not as good in the images. So that was a little bit of a learning curve, but really only because I was used to the way that TPT will accept big files and Etsy does not. Etsy, you can do up to 10 images and a video, but there's no PDF preview. So the way I worked around this is I would open up my PDF preview that I made for TPT, and then I would just screenshot each slide, and then I would just upload those as images to Etsy. So that worked out. The thumbnail is a little weird on Etsy. Like you can do a square thumbnail, but then when somebody sees it on the search page, they're only going to see part of the square. However, you can like move what part of the square they see. So I don't know, maybe I'll have to experiment with some different sizings for Etsy thumbnails. On Etsy, your title can be a lot longer. So on TPT, it's pretty limited, but you can add a lot of extra words on Etsy if you want to. There are tags on Etsy, which is not unlike TPT, although you get more tags. But one thing that's different is that on Etsy, you can put a product under one category, but you can't add multiple labels to it like on TPT. Like if something is a rhythm bingo game, I can't label it under the category of bingo and rhythm. Like it has to be one or the other. I like that on TPT a little bit better than Etsy. So let's talk about the difference in fees. So with TPT, if you have the premium seller account, which is $60 a year, then you're paying 20% of each sale, and then the 30-cent transaction fee only if the entire cart is under $3. And then on Etsy, you're basically just paying the 6.5% on the total cost of the purchase. Sometimes there is a transaction fee, but not always. I'm not entirely clear on that. But then there is a 20-cent listing fee, and that happens initially when you first put the product up. And then if you want it to renew after 4 months, it'll be another 20 cents to keep it listed up there. So although the structures are a little bit different, I mean, I'm no mathematician, but I think Etsy is better on the fees end. Like I think you make more money, right? So that's nice. One thing I did notice is that reviews came in quicker on Etsy. So like TPT, I don't know, why is it just like pulling teeth to get people to review your products on TPT? Or maybe that's just been my experience. But like it took forever to get my first review on TPT. On Etsy, right away. I just think that like the Etsy customer has already been, like people leave reviews on Etsy. It's just like a part of the culture. Whereas on TPT, it's not as common, which is weird because on TPT, you actually get credits towards your future purchases. As far as tracking traffic coming to your store, I do feel like it is easier to see what's coming in, or it's more accurate on Etsy. You have the UTM codes on TPT, and so those are helpful to see where people are clicking, but I've heard a lot of veteran TPT sellers say that that's not entirely accurate. And the Etsy one seems to be a little more accurate. You can see like exactly where your traffic is coming from. Another big thing that's different on Etsy is that you can have like ongoing sale codes for your store. Because they don't have bundles on Etsy, I actually put some Etsy codes up on my store. They're like ongoing sales where if you buy 2 things, you get 10% off. If you buy 3 things, you get 50% off. 4 things, you get 20, and 5 things, you get 25% off. So that's just a code that anyone can use. And I'm using that like in place of bundles. On Etsy, you can follow up with your customers really easily. On TPT, you can see their name under your sales report, but that's all you get. There's no way to follow up with them. The conversations you can have on the Etsy platform are better because the Q&A on TPT, they ask you a question, you answer it, and you can't have an ongoing conversation. Whereas on Etsy, it's more of like an IM situation. So you can talk back and forth to the customer as much as you want. You can even email them or send them something after they purchase the product. So you can follow up with them as much as you want. You just can't like spam them, obviously. So yeah, those are the major differences that I noticed in like the seller experience on TPT versus Etsy. So do I think it was worth it to put in the time and effort to get those products up on Etsy? I will say that I'm glad I started with TPT first. I think if you pick one platform and stick with it and learn it and then think about adding another one, that's a better strategy than trying to learn 2 at the same time. So I am glad that I started with TPT first. I think in the educational digital download world, it's easier to gain some traction faster on TPT than it is on Etsy. However, Etsy does have its advantages. So if you are a classroom teacher, then I would say for sure stick to TPT, add Etsy later. If you are a piano teacher creating resources for other piano teachers, then I would say pick the platform that you feel most comfortable with or that looks the most interesting to you, and then add the second one later on if you want to. Comparing them from a monetary standpoint, I made more money on Etsy in my first 2 months than I did on TPT in my first 2 months. I think I made like $7.98 my first 2 months on TPT, which was April and May of 2023. And on Etsy, I made $38.64. So the numbers don't lie. I want to say that I like TPT better. And I think it's because of like the sense of community that there is around TPT sellers and buyers. Like there's just something about it. For us teachers, it just feels like we're a part of something bigger. Whereas Etsy just feels like this like big marketplace where our products are getting lost. But I mean, that's a pretty big income difference. And I also need to mention that all of my traffic was pointed towards my TPT store. So all my Pinterest pins, all of my blog posts, all of my emails, everything is linked to my TPT store. I did not link anything to my Etsy store at all. I just threw it up there and let the organic traffic find it. So I guess we will see what happens in the next few months. Obviously, I am not making $7.98 anymore on TPT. Things are going real well over there. I think I just need to give Etsy a chance and just see how it does in the next 6 months. So here is my plan and my advice for you. My plan is to keep putting all new resources on TPT and Etsy, just putting them both up there, and see how it goes over the next few months. If you are thinking about opening an Etsy shop, I would say go ahead and do it. Do it right away. And here's why. They are going to start charging $15 for new stores to set up shop. So the requirements to get your store set up are going to be a little bit stricter with like official IDs, security measures and stuff like that, plus the $15 fee. Whereas on the day of the filming of this video, you can still open an Etsy store for free. And then it's just the 20-cent listing for any of your new listings that you put up there. So if you've been thinking about it and dragging your feet, at least go through the initial motions and get that store set up. So I'm just gonna let that Etsy store simmer for a little bit and then we'll see how it's doing in a few months. So in the comments, leave me any questions you have about selling on Etsy, piano teacher resources, or teacher resources in general, and I'll try to include some of my experience in the next video. If you're interested on how the whole journey started on TPT, then check out my first income report for my first 6 months on Teachers Pay Teachers, and I will see you there.